And we're live! Woohoo!
Yay!
And this week we have the amazing Jackie Goddard, former fashion designer and speaker and acting coach. So, for the 0.1% of the whole global community who has no idea about your tremendous fame, can you briefly explain how you became a speaking coach primarily, but also an acting coach?
Oh God, where shall I start? Shall I go back to the 8-year-old me? No.
Well, go back as far as you like. If it's relevant, then yeah, sure do.
Well, I think it all started in the playground. I used to make up plays and rope everybody in, and I'd star in them and write them, and then we'd perform them to the class or anybody that would watch. And so I always expected that I would be an actor.
Yeah.
When I got to my careers teacher at school at age 16 and said I wanted to be an actor, she kind of went, "Oh, really? What, have you been in any plays?" And I said, "Well, I was in one." "And do you go to the theatre much?" And I said, "Well, I went to a panto." "Do you belong to a drama club?" And I said, "Well, no, I lived miles from the school." And she basically said, "No, you don't want to be an actor." She said, "If you wanted to be an actor, you'd live, die and breathe the theatre. What else can you do?" And I wasn't bad. I used to love art and fashion. So I ended up going to do a foundation art course and then went on from there to do a fashion and textiles course. And so then I became a fashion designer for all of 5 years, but it was an awful business and I just wasn't really suited for it at all. And a friend that I had done the fashion course with had also become very disillusioned with the industry, and she'd moved into theatre and she'd gone to work for the Royal Shakespeare Company at the Barbican in London, as they were then, not there anymore. And so she got me a cover job there as a dresser. And as soon as I arrived at the Barbican and started mixing with the actors, and just, it felt like home. And so just with a chance conversation with one of the actors, I thought, no, I can do this, because I think I'd lost confidence in acting. I didn't really have the confidence. My careers teacher obviously didn't help. So aged 29, 30, I ended up going to drama college. So I actually went and did a course then, and then went on into fringe theatre. I did Edinburgh with some people that I'd been on the course with, and then we did the London Fringe and did bits and pieces, and then I ended up in a play with people that I didn't know, which was a first, like a jobbing actor. Which was all very interesting. Lots of interesting things that came out of my trying desperately to be a successful actor. But as anybody that's tried that knows, it's not an easy thing to make money at. So I ended up kind of moving into teaching and coaching acting because it paid the bills. And that's what I did for quite a few years, until lockdown, when I was talking to other business owners and realizing that actually lots of people are worried, quite rightly sometimes, of stepping on stages and in front of their audiences. But it's expected these days that people show up for their audience. So that's why I decided that perhaps I could use all of the background that I had, all of the training that I'd had, experience that I'd had on stage, to help other people get there.
Okay, so we've gone from the past, and now let's go straight into the present. Right? Let's be the ghost of Christmas present. I'm getting confused in my metaphors here, but that's all right. So right now, the main thing you're doing is helping people to go up on stage, and is that to be confident, or what would you say the goal of your, like, somebody comes in, like, hires you as a speaking coach, what is the goal that you are trying to get there? Is it to be confident on stage, or just to appear confident on stage? What would you say success is from your kind of
success is? And I have literally just written an article on this, because I don't think people realize. I think when people book me, or they come to work with me, they think that I'm going to get them on a stage and tell them how they should learn their lines and speak clearly. And actually, I would say 70% of what I do and the outcome that I want for my clients is to make them comfortable with their content. And so they need to find the story behind what it is that they're trying to speak about. So whatever the point is or the outcome that they want for the audience, there's a story there. There's a reason for them doing that. And so many people don't understand what that is, why they're speaking. They don't always believe what they're saying because it's all jumbled up in their heads. And so 70% of what I do is to get all of that out of their head, and then as an outsider looking at what they've got, then I find the stories that then will relate to the audience that they're speaking to. So by the time we've been through the whole process, they are comfortable with what it is that they're talking about. And then they're not, those,
Yeah.
you're not going to get rid of the nerves. Even I get nervous on stages. It's normal. It's fight or flight. It's there to keep us safe. But when they're comfortable with their content, then there's a confidence that they find in themselves and their own stories. And then my aim is to get them excited about being in front of an audience. And that doesn't have to be a stage. That can be in front of a camera. It could be in a Zoom room. It could be in a networking space. It's just getting to the point where they are so happy to be speaking about what they love to do, because 9 times out of 10, we're all doing what we love doing. We just don't know how to articulate it. And we don't know, we all kind of have this imposter syndrome thing going on that makes us think or believe that other people aren't interested in what we've got to say. And actually they are, and you are knowledgeable and you have all of that inside you. It's just my job to bring it all out so that you're comfortable and excited about speaking.
Okay. Well, I suppose I should ask, what's the other 30% of what you do then? The whole 100%.
Yeah, the other 30% is I always start with a warm up, and so you get all of because we hold so much tension in our shoulders and our neck. Even just crouched over a laptop all day. It's just about getting rid of all that sort of tension here. So I do lots of warm up exercises around loosening up all of the body so that you're nice and relaxed when you're speaking. Again, exercising the whole of the mouth, getting all of those organs of articulation moving. So the warm-up's a big part of it. The breathing is another big part of it, because we only use this very sort of top part of our lungs when we breathe, when we're not thinking about breathing, when we breathe to live. And actually what we want to do for performance and to really support our voices is to learn to breathe from the belly. And so that's a fundamental to the work that I do. And then, if people have issues around, and again, it's amazing really, because I'll get people in the beginning to stand up and speak, and they're wandering from side to side. They're doing the moon dance. They're kind of walking across the space. They're doing a sort of a jig. The hands, they don't know what to do with their hands. But once we've been through that process, then actually that part of my job is almost redundant, because they are so comfortable in themselves and the content and what they're talking about, that actually all of this, when we're talking to a friend across a dinner table or in a cafe, we don't worry where we put our hands. We don't worry about, we don't end up jigging from foot to foot. And so that's where that comes from. But the other 30% is really just the fundamentals of the physicality of the voice and using it and supporting it.
So, when we're talking about, because presumably there is a difference between speaking and acting as such, because I know that on screenplays and things, actors can have a bit of ad lib here and there, but they are supposed to be following a script usually. Do you encourage the people you're trying to speak to have like bullet points and things like that, or something in their mind to memorize the entire speech? Or are you much more like these are the concepts and like keep it fluid and keep it like, how do you deal with that? Because there are some people I know who have like scripted stage instructions when they're giving a talk, and I'm one of that. I can't be bothered to do that.
That's really, really difficult. Any actor, and I've been there, is if you've got a script and a character that you're playing, the playwright has written those words for a reason. I mean, if you're doing Shakespeare, you don't ad lib. You speak every single word that is written for you as a character. and you memorize that. That's what you have to do. But in those situations, you're part of a cast generally. You are not, it's not like an hour and a half monologue. You're sort of interacting with people. And so it's about reacting, acting and reacting. So you're finding your motivation, your character and all of those things. And as much as there is a certain amount of that when you're speaking as yourself, that you have to know your motivation. Why are you up there? Why are you speaking? But you're also telling a story. So even though it may be data, I always give my clients a flow chart. So beginning, middle, and end. And the idea is that you make sure you hit all the points and you get all the data out there, but you take the audience on a journey. And so we plan that journey using stories, because if you tell a story, and especially if it's one of your own, you don't have to tell your own stories. But if it's a story, an anecdote, an experience that relates to a point that you want to underline or you want the audience to take away, then it's so much easier to remember a story than it is to remember a script.
Yeah.
And so if you can, you have sort of 4 or 5 bullet points that you need to hit, and there's a story hung on every single one, and then there's a visual that goes with it. So by the time we've sort of planned all of that out, we've got the beginning, the middle and the end. We know what journey we want to take the audience on. We know what points need to be underlined so that they'll go away feeling something. So you don't want them to go away, memorized your script. You want them to go away with sort of an emotion that they've learned something and they've gone away feeling something. And so it's not about learning a script. There is a structure, and that structure can be written down. If I'm doing a talk, I always write my talk down, but I need to learn more or less. When I was an actor and when I was working at the Royal Shakespeare Company, they'd have tech rehearsals, and the tech rehearsal was literally how you get from one scene to the next. So they didn't rehearse the scene, they rehearsed the connector. So how do you get from that scene to the next scene? There's a blackout, the lights go down, the music comes in, the actors move here, the set comes on. And it's the same way that I work with people, is that you go from one subject to the next subject, or one bullet point to the next bullet point. When you know those stories, all you need to know is the connector. Yeah. What's going to take you from that story to the next story that will then lead into the next story. And so by the end of it, you've not memorized the script, but you know the structure.
Yeah. Okay. So, what's your advice to people when stuff goes wrong? So let's say I was at a conference last week? Yeah, it was last week, something, my mind. And they had this poor woman who was supposed to be playing these videos, and the videos wouldn't play. And she was kind of like very flustered by the fact that the video that she was going to put up of a TikTok thing, it was about a session about TikTok, and none of her videos played. And she was quite flustered by that. What's your kind of advice for, like, is there a mindset thing you encourage your clients to use, or is it like having that story structure means that you can just fall back on the stories? Like, what's your view about slides and that sort of? I'm asking a stupidly long question, but environmental stuff goes wrong. What's your opinions of that?
I mean, that is very difficult. If you would want to, as long as you're prepared yourself.
Yeah.
If you've got something very technical, then my advice would be to get there early and check it out.
Yeah.
Make sure that you know that the tech is working. If that's not possible, and for whatever reason, and stuff does happen, is that yes, if you've got everything that you need, that you could almost do it without any visuals at all. The visuals for me are just that. They're visuals. They're not for you as a speaker to rely on to get you through whatever presentation you're doing. They're obviously a fantastic aid. And if you're doing a talk on TikTok and you can't show a TikTok video, then that's hard. But hopefully, even if you've got an image, you can kind of explain what it is. But I always say to people, memorize to improvise.
Yeah.
And if you know your stuff that well, you've rehearsed and you've practiced and you're prepared, then actually, as long as you build a rapport with the audience, then the audience are on your side. If they can see that you've tried, then they will be with you. There's nothing worse as an audience member to see somebody flustering and feeling awful on stage, because that makes us fluster and feel awful as well. So if you can get into a space, check out the tech if you have time. If not, make sure that you have built some kind of rapport with the audience, preferably beforehand. If you can get into, if it's a networking or a conference or whatever, and you're mixing and mingling with the people beforehand, just make sure that you feel comfortable in the space. I was talking to a keynote speaker for my podcast, Tom Morris, and he was saying if he gets the chance, and he speaks on some big stages, he will get into the space and he will stand there and he'll get his mindset around the fact that he is the host. This is his living room for that hour, however long he's on the stage for. And he's invited the people there. He's the host. He's invited the people in. And so he kind of, the mindset he has is that he's there for them. And if you can build that rapport and get yourself comfortable in the space, when the tech, hopefully if the tech goes wrong, then actually you're not in a space where you're just feeling completely alienated. You've got people on your side.
Yeah. Okay, so going like slightly related to environment, but you were saying like obviously on the stage physically is one place, but doing an interview like this is another place. And how do you help? Because it's like I've done so many of these kind of interviews. This is the host and the guest. I'm like I can turn up and do one of these, but I so rarely talk on the stage that it's a kind of just I would get very nervous, I think, on stage. Probably less so because I've got that experience. But is there a way that you can help people transfer their kind of confidence in one arena onto another? So let's say they are somebody who's used to speaking on stage, but they're not used to doing like media interviews like this. Is there a way that you can help people transfer their experience across, or is it a case that you just need to do it and get the experience up by doing it, sort of thing?
I mean, yes, of course there is that. The more you do something, the better and the easier it's going to be. There's no getting away from that. But again, it comes back to the content. If you are comfortable with what it is that you've got to speak about, then it's different completely. I mean, obviously, I do this as a host and a guest, and I enjoy talking about my subject. So if I'm a guest, just give me a question and off I go. Whereas if I'm on a stage, if I've got a talk to give on a stage, then that's a whole other thing. I've got to prepare for that. I've got to, I know my stuff, but I want to take the audience on that journey. I have to know who the audience is. So every time I do a talk, although the subject is roughly the same, I'm talking to a different audience. It might be an audience of small business owners. It might be an audience of creators. You have to know who your audience is. And that's the same if you're speaking on a Zoom call or if you're speaking on a podcast. Then who is the audience? Who is it that you're talking about? Who are you talking to? But it is always about the audience. So that sort of changes depending on what platform you're on. But as long as you kind of have them in mind. I mean, I was talking to John Burkhart, John from our You Are the Media Pal, and he's obviously keynote speaker, been on many stages, and I was talking to him and he said the audience don't care who you are. They really don't care about you, so they only care about what it is that you have to deliver. What is the benefit to them? That's what they're thinking as an audience member. So as long as you are comfortable talking about your subject, then you should be able to transfer to any platform. But obviously, if you've got a talk or a presentation to give, that needs to be planned. You need to have a beginning and a middle and an end, and you need to be comfortable enough that you know what that journey is for you to be able to do that.
Yeah. So, are there any kind of like? Well, actually, before I do that, because I think you mentioned at the Failed Nights presentation that you were teaching some stuntmen how to act, which must be quite a different thing. So talk a little bit about that and like in your mindset, do you have to switch over to like I'm now back to doing the acting coach thing from the speaking thing, or what kind? I want to just talk about it because it sounds interesting.
Teaching stunt performers. Obviously, there are some women in there.
Yeah, sorry,
Not many women, but there are some
Yeah.
women. Well, this came about. I mean, obviously, I've been teaching actors for many years. But this came up. My dad happens to be a stunt man. He has been for the whole of my life, really. And so I kind of have an in. I mean, I've been teaching acting for a long time, and this teaching the stunt performers only really came up last year when I was sort of talking to somebody else in the industry, and they were saying, well, the British Stunt Register, which is obviously where all the stunt performers kind of go through their training and make sure that they're fully trained before they get onto the register, before they can then go and work on a film. They wanted to bring they wanted more stunt performers to have an acting training, and as much as it was a stipulation, a qualification they had to have, it wasn't regulated really. So they wanted to bring it all in house. So they got me and there's another 2 acting coaches I work alongside, and so we put together a 5-day intensive course specifically for stunt performers. So it's very bespoke, but these guys come in on a Monday morning. So we have the Monday to Friday. They come in on a Monday morning. No, they have no idea what they're letting themselves in for. Most of them have never done any acting before at all.
Yeah.
And they are, they could be world record holders in gymnastics, or they could be, GB. They've got amazing, Olympics. All of these people are like top in their sports, and they've been doing it since they were 4 years old. So these are sports, these are athletes, and they come in on a Monday morning, and we're I want to swear, but they really are just, they're not very happy at what we might be putting them through. And then we just sort of take them on a journey of opening up, and all of the acting really is just being honest. When I say to people I'm an actor, they'll say, you must be good at lying. They say, no, that's not what acting's about. It's about telling the truth, and it's about finding the truth in a character and the motivation and all of those things. So we literally take them on this incredible journey. So by the Friday afternoon, they come out thinking, I can do this. I could actually be an actor. And they're all good enough to, if you take people on the right journey and give them that confidence and make them feel comfortable, then anybody within reason could actually act. There's no reason why not. And it's fun to be at Pinewood Studios and sort of teaching them up there. And it's great. I love it.
Yeah. So have you seen any of your proteges from that in any films? Well, I suppose you shouldn't really see the stuntmen.
I shouldn't have seen them. The thing was, this all kind of kicked off about a year or so ago. So it was last summer we did the first course, and then there was the writers' strike. So everything went really quiet, and it's not even now. It's not really kind of. There's a few films going on, but I've not had the opportunity to really see. But I've been getting some great feedback from the guys that have been through it already. I think we're up to about 50 stunt performers that have been through the course, if not more, actually, probably 60. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to them all getting onto a set and bumping into the other guys that have been through it, and because they've all got a shared experience now.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so before we get on to the how people work with you thing, let's talk a little bit about your podcast, because you have a podcast, and I think it's a live show as well, isn't it? So who is that show for, and how long have you been doing it?
That show is called Speaking About Speaking. So I speak to speakers and speaker coaches about their experience of being on stages, their experience of coaching other people, their tips, advice that they can give. I always ask them at the end what, in their opinion, makes a good speaker good and a bad speaker suck. Yeah. But in the world we live in now, if you are a founder, an entrepreneur, anybody that's running a business, even an employees, I work with teams on presentations, and so anybody is a speaker. Wherever we speak. So it's quite a nice. It's a niche, but it's quite a nice niche because I can kind of fit everybody into it if I want to. But it started for me. The podcast, I used to do a recorded version, which came out of lockdown, when I used to speak to people about creativity. because that was my thing. I come from a very creative background, so I was interested, especially in lockdown, how people were using creativity for their work and for their well-being. So that's where it started.
Okay. Well, that sounds interesting. And it does sound like I used to have the Begin Self-Publishing podcast, and I really bent the rules as to who some of the guests were.
Yeah.
But when you've got something vaguely to do with social media or publishing, come on the show.
Yeah. But tomorrow, I must say, tomorrow, I've got at 4:00, Tuesday, 4:00, on LinkedIn and YouTube, I've got Shelley Rostland, and Shelley and I worked together on a talk that she gave at Creator Day a couple of weeks back. And so I had her on the podcast beforehand to sort of just see how she was finding it. And then obviously tomorrow, having been on the and been on the stage and spoken in front of 200 people with the talk that I helped her shape, she's back on tomorrow to tell me how it all went and how she's feeling now.
Well, she actually mentioned this show indirectly in her speech. Because,
did she? Your show. Yes, she did.
We interviewed her, and it was only in the run-up to it, because I knew that Jenny had issues with alopecia, and I was a bit like, well, we can talk about it. Are we okay to talk about that? And she was a bit sort of reluctant, and she said, oh, yes. So we kind of did it towards the end of the show. And I think that was the first time for a long time that she started talking about it.
Yeah.
And it made the interview really good, because, the trouble is, a lot of the time, the stuff that's often the most interesting about us is the things that we don't want to talk about.
Absolutely.
It's unusual in that regard.
Yeah.
So I might well be tuning in for that if I remember my terrible memory for things.
I'll send you a prompt.
That's for anybody watching this on YouTube, that will have been in the past. For those watching it live, it will be tomorrow, which is the 14th, I think. Isn't it?
Yes, Tuesday the 14th, 4:00 BST.
But do you put your shows on YouTube afterwards, or
no? I threw StreamYard, and I can't see that you've got that actually. But yeah, on StreamYard, I put it goes straight out into YouTube.
Yeah, well, that's what I used. I used to do that with this show, but now I release it separately. In the idea to try and get ahead, but as I said, I've failed dismally, and I think there might be a gap of a few weeks before we have the next episode.
No, I'm a bit like that with the audio. So the video goes out live to YouTube and LinkedIn at the same time, and then I take the audio and put it onto the podcast platforms at a later date.
Yeah. So, but people can find it on YouTube and on the audio platforms later after it's on. People can find it. So that brings us on to the usual last question: is how can people find you online? How can people who've seen this and think, I really want to work with this woman, I want to improve my speaking, or maybe it's a stuntman who's watching it, thinking I want to learn acting. So, how can people work with you? How big can people find out with you? What's the name of your podcast, and what's the price of fish?
Price of fish, I don't know.
Yeah.
LinkedIn is great. You can come and connect with me there, or DM me there if you want to. Jackie Goddard, Power to Speak on LinkedIn. Same with Power to Speak. The powertospeak.co.uk is the website, and obviously you can find out about everything on there. You can sign up for my newsletter there. So every 2 weeks I have a newsletter that goes out, and that's got tips, techniques, bit of news, all of that. So sign up for the newsletter, and the blogs on there. So the one that I've just released today or yesterday was Get Your Story Straight. So that's talking about the fact that how important it is to share your story.
Okay.
For your business and for your work, really.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, and thanks for the people who've been watching. And there have been, well, according to StreamYard, there's 3 people watching. They've not said anything in the comments, so obviously they've just been so flabbergasted by how good the content is. So.
Oh well, I haven't given anybody a chance to speak. Apologies for that, Tim.
So thanks so much for being on the show, and hopefully there'll be a show next week, but there might not be. If not, it'll be in a couple of weeks' time. So thanks for everybody watching.
Bye.
This is what God requires.